2023 PSI or optional paper. This is question 1A. Normative approach in political science. तो ये पेपर 1 का पहला क्वेश्चन है, नॉर्मेटिव अप्रोच इन पॉलिटिकल साइंस। तो नॉर्मेटिव अप्रोच क्या होता है? नॉर्म्स मतलब व्हाट आउट टू बी, क्या होना चाहिए, एंड व्हाट शुड बी इन सोसाइटी इज करेक्ट और एथिकली इज गुड। तो इसी पे क्वेश्चन बनता है। So the normative approach to political theory plays a foundational role in shaping the moral philosophy within the field of political science. It is fundamentally concerned with discerning what ought to be, what ought to be, discerning what ought to be and should be in the realm of politics, as eloquently stated by Isa Berlin. जैसे मैंने कहा, Isaiah Berlin, to describe it as the discovery or application of moral notion in the sphere of political relation. Roots of normative political theory. This approach finds historical roots in the works of ancient Greek philosophers, notably Plato and Aristotle. The writings laid the groundwork for the exploration of ethical and moral dimension within the political thought. Evolution and importance over time, normative political theory has evolved and diversified. Notable development include utilitarianism, championed by Jeremy Bentham and Stuart Mill, which posits that the pleasure and pain should serve as the guiding principle for political decision making. Now, deontological liberalism, as articulated by John Rawls, which emphasizes principle of justice and fairness as fundamental to political morality. Communitarianism, which underscores the significance of communal values and social bonds in shaping political ethics. So, however, normative approach is not without its critics. Ludwig Wittgenstein argued that the political philosophy should confine itself to the factual and descriptive language of natural science. This critic questions the validity of normative political theory in providing concrete, accountable, actionable insights, suggesting that it may be too abstract. Another concern associated with normative political theory is its potential for bias. Since it often involves the exploration of moral and ethical ideas, it can reflect the personal values and bias of the theorist, potentially leading to subjective conclusion. It is important to acknowledge the relevance of other approaches within the political science, such as historical and empirical method. These approaches provide valuable insight into the understanding the realities of political system and the development over time, complementing the normative perspective. So, in conclusion, the normative approach to political theory serves as a cornerstone of moral philosophy within the political science. By grappling with question of what ought to be in politics, it fosters critical discussion and debates that contribute to the continuous improvement of political system. While it has faced critics regarding its level of abstraction and potential bias, its role in shaping in political discourse and guiding ethical consideration remains integral to dynamism of the field of political theory. Now, another concern associated with normative political theory is the potential for bias. ठीक है, bias दिख रहा है. Since it often involves the exploration of moral and ethical ideals, it can reflect the personal values and biases of theorists, potentially leading to subjective conclusion. It's important to acknowledge the relevance of other approaches within political science, such as historical and empirical methods. These approaches provide valuable insight into understanding the realities of political system and their development over time, complementing the normative perspective. So, in conclusion, the normative approach to political theory serve as the cornerstone of moral philosophy within political science. क्या है? Serve as the cornerstone of moral philosophy within the political science. By grappling with question what ought to be in politics, it fosters critical discussion and it debates that contribute to the continuous improvement of political system. While it has faced critics regarding its level of abstraction and potential bias, its role in shaping political discourse and guiding ethical consideration remains integral to dynamics of field of political theory. Question 2. Comment multicultural perspective on right. क्या है? Multicultural perspective on rights. The mainstream discourse on rights has predominantly centered around individual liberties, often emanating from liberal theories of justice. Yet, as societies has become increasingly diverse, the lens of multiculturalism offers an alternative framework, one that goes beyond individual right to include collective and cultural rights as well. Individual versus collective right. The classical liberal perspective, epitomized by thinkers like John Locke and Immanuel Kant, posits rights as inherent to individual. However, critics such as Charles Taylor and Will Kimlick argue that this framework is insufficient in a multicultural society. Taylor's notions of recognition and his situated purposes that individual identity is partially shaped by cultural group, thereby necessitating collective rights. Shortcomings of monolithic policies, liberal models, one size fits all approach to rights often falls short in addressing the complexities of multicultural society. Eris Marin Young critics the University of liberal policies, asserting that they can perpetuate systematic marginalization. For instance, secularism as universal principle can disadvantage religious minorities who may have collective norms differing from mainstream culture. Now, rethinking rights, scholars such as Charles Taylor and William Nika have significantly contributed to the reconceptualization of rights within the multicultural setting. Kimlicka differentiation between internal restriction and external protection argues for cultural safeguards that do not infringe upon individual liberties in the group. Biko Parekh pushes the discourse further by advocating for dialogue-based approach to determine collective rights, thereby involving all stakeholders in the rights framework. The multicultural perspective on rights serves as the compelling alternative to traditional framework, especially as society are increasingly characterized by pluralism. It allows for the reformulation of more equitable and inclusive policies. However, the risk of essentializing cultural norms and perpetuating internal hierarchy within the minority groups cannot be overlooked. Therefore, the multicultural approach, while promising, requires rigorous scrutiny to ensure it does not inadvertently reinforce existing inequalities. State of nature as state of war, Hobbes. State of nature as a state of war, ये हो गया हॉब्स का. So, state of nature envisaged how men live or would have lived without the authority of civil law, state or political control. Hobbes in Leviathan 1651 sought to justify absolute power of the sovereign. He draws a gloomy picture of the state of nature. Hobbes defines the state of nature in the context of his concept of human nature. Hobbes postulates that man is selfish by nature. He thinks of man as a atomistic, a social individual. Men are moved to action not by intellectual but by their appetite, desire, and passion. So, in the absence of law and justice, a state of nature is characterized by perpetual struggle, ceaseless conflict, and constant warfare. In Hobbes' words of a man at his stage is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and so on. And every man is the enemy to every man. In pursuit of man's own pleasure, he wants power over others, but physical and mental powers are nearly alike. Nobody is able to overpower the other. Hence, we stand in natural fear for each other. It is a state of total insecurity. There is no law to prevent oppression or to contain the law of jungle. It is a state of absolute anarchy. However, critics of Hobbes' theory of a state of nature as unreal, grossly exaggerated, and even misleading. Hence, the main concern of Hobbes became order or security. Hobbes' main concern was the protection of life. Hobbes has established the right to life or right to self-preservation as absolute right. फूको कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ फूको कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पावर क्या है? ये है Foucault, the French postmodernist, has been hugely influential in shaping understanding of power. His theory is unconventional as it explains that power does not lie in state or structure, or it's not tool of concern rather than productivity and development. Theories of discourses, society power in the form of discourses, that is the institutionalized way of telling about something that makes it seem normal. Discourses following through society like blood in capillaries. Hence, power is everywhere and not concentrated in some people of or in situation. Power is not negative. Foucault recognized that power is not just negative, coercive, or repressive thing that forces us to do things against our wishes, but can also be necessary, productive, and positive force in society. However, power gives us identity, capacity to do things. Hence, power is productive. Concept of disciplinary power. According to Foucault, discipline is the power. It exercised in such a way that the person on whom this power is exercised feels that it is in interest. Does this disciplinary power consist of discipline and punishment? He gives the reference of panopticon, panopticon, which is semicircular design of prison given by Bentham. So it is in this design there is a central power tower from where prison authorities can keep watch on the activities of the prisoner. ये Bentham ने दिया था, okay. So similarly, the society in which we live is like panopticon. We are all prisoners outside of the prison or inside. We automatically develop the ability to govern ourselves governmentally. The concept given by Foucault, those who are unable to develop a governed mentality are sent to either prisoners or asylum. Noam Chomsky calls Foucault as someone who wildly exaggerates the influence of power in scientific discourse. He agrees that the power does not exist in scientific realm of thought, but talk about regimes of power is widely overestimating the facts. Foucault theory of power is different from those given by Hobbes or Marx. For Hobbes, power is judicial, legal, wherein power lies in the sovereign. For Marx, power lies with the class owning means of production. In contrast, Foucault views power is not concentrated; rather, it is diffused, and each individual is a carrier of power. So this holds true the present context as well, where the power is not dimensional but flows from multi-direction. Farmers' agitation in India, withdrawal from farms bill is an excellent example of it. This holds true in the present context as well. The power is not in one dimensional but flows from multi-direction. Farmers' agitation in India and withdrawal of farms bills is an excellent example of it. Now, decline of political theory. Political theory involves a structured examination of political aspects. In political theory centers on question about what should be considered ideal, it is referred to as normative theory. Normative theory aims to establish and recommend values as opposed to empirical theory, which aims to uncover and elucidate factual information. Additionally, the exploration of politics has primarily influenced by philosophical and historical methodology, both of which poses normative character. First, decline of political theory, the rise of behavioralism. So, in the 20th century, the normative approach to political theory came under scrutiny from behavioralists like David Stern. Stern challenged the conventional normative theory, arguing that it relied on the speculation rather than empirical observation of political reality. He contended that traditional theories were out of touch, primarily concerned with the prescribing values or focusing solely on the study of isolated political situations. Heston believed that normative theory overlooked the examination of political processes as they unfolded in the real world and actual behaviors of political actors. He even accused traditionalists like Sabine of clinging the century-old idea, describing them as parasitic. David Stern aimed at to introduce scientific rigor in the study of politics by applying empirical method to uncover the genuine facts behind the political phenomenon. He laid the intellectual groundwork for behavioralism, emphasizing the importance of quantification, observation, measurement, and verification to distinguish between objective facts and subjective values. His goal was to transform political science into pure science. Second, decline of political theory and rise of behavioralism. Behavioralism once held a dominant position as a methodology in the field of political science. However, it faced criticism from figures like Leo Strauss, who argued that behavioralism prioritized perfecting research technique at expense of addressing substantive issues. Over time, even proponents of behavioralism began to acknowledge that their preoccupation with creating a pure science, he led them to retreat into academic ivory tower, neglecting pressing socio-political concerns of this area. The strain resulted in the political science becoming increasingly ideologically conservative as it failed to critically examine existing system and ignore the exploration of values and normative analysis. Recognizing this crisis within the discipline, David Stern himself advocated for post-behavioral revolution. Post-behavioralism emerged with the aim of reintroducing the role of political theory in the shaping of societal values and defining the objective that politics should pursue as a means of enhancing human development. In a sense, it sought to reintroduce normative content into the field of political science.